Hello. Well, thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled with the Science Nexus neighborhood that we're presenting today. And for lunch, we have a really special panel that we've prepared. The focus of this panel is on interdisciplinary careers. So it's identifying ways in which we engage in science and engineering and social science in many different ways. And so my name is Dalia Kirschbaum. I've been helping to moderate this, but the true leaders of this panel are going to be our two moderators, who are early career scientists. We have Leah Saldage, who's from Northwestern University and an early career member of the Natural Hazards section. And we have Paige Martin, who is an early career representative of the AGU Council and also affiliated with nonlinear geophysics. So I actually would like to turn it directly over to them to introduce our panel.
Thank you so much, Dalia. I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Sandra Cauffman, Acting Director of Earth Sciences Division at NASA. Thank you so much for being here. And also, Anahita Hassanzadeh, did I say that right? I hope so. Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. You are a research scientist at LIFT. Thanks for being here today.
And directly to my right here, we have Marlene Nist, and she is the Senior Director at Risk Management Solutions. And finally, Christine Rogers. She is the Adjunct Associate Professor in Environmental Health Sciences in the School of Public Health and Health Sciences at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And she's also Director of Aerobiology Instruction and Research. So thank you all for being here. And now we'll let you speak for a few minutes about your journeys to your careers.
Okay, I guess I'll go first since you named my name first. So I am Sandra Cauffman. I am the Acting Director of the Earth Science Division at NASA. And because I am not a scientist, I'm going to start with that. My background is engineering and physics. I do not have a PhD. But here I am running the Earth Science Division at NASA. And so it is a little bit of a crooked path to get there. My background, most of my career I spent in designing instrumentation, working with scientists, understanding their needs, understanding what is it that they needed instrument-wise to get their data. So while I am not a scientist and while I am not assessing the data and analyzing the data and looking at results, I did work with scientists in the past really closely to understand their needs and be able to develop the instruments and hardware that they needed to do and gather their science. So when I applied for this particular position that I have right now, the way that they set up the structure is that the director is usually the scientist, and they need a complementary position, which is the hardware person, who understands the hardware, who understands the money, who understands the schedules, who understands how to develop the missions. So I became the deputy for the Earth Science Division at NASA, overseeing all of aspects that we have related to Earth science. We have 23 satellites that are orbiting Earth right now, collecting data, but we have a large number of missions under development. The hardware, the piece, is about 60% of our budget. So it is very necessary that we have people who actually understand how we do the missions before we even get the data. So early on in my career, I wanted to study electrical engineering. That was what I wanted to do ever since I was in high school. I grew up in Costa Rica, so I wanted to work for NASA. When I went to college, they told me I could not study electrical engineering because I was a woman. That was the crooked way about it. I spent 7 semesters in industrial engineering, and then I decided to come to the United States to finally get what I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So it took me another 7 semesters to be able to get my degree in electrical engineering. I also have a bachelor's in physics, and I eventually got a master's in electrical engineering. Like I explained before, I spent most of my life in my career working with scientists and designing hardware. So it hasn't been a straight path. I wouldn't say that, like the career is, I see the career like a big ladder, and you're not going to jump from the first step to the last one in one jump, so you got to, take your time, going slowly and getting there. And yes, I have taken many steps backwards in order to go forward, starting with the fact that I couldn't study what I wanted to begin with. So the one advice I can give you before I hand the mic is, enjoy, find within you what is it that you want to do, and move forward. And, and once you make a decision, don't look back. So
Anahita, would you like to go next?
Sure, why not? Hi everyone, I'm Anahita. I'm a research scientist at Lyft, and I thought I would talk to you about the journey in my career, which hasn't been that long at all, but I thought some of you may find it interesting. I finished my PhD in industrial engineering, mathematical optimization 4 years ago, and I joined the industry afterwards. And I thought some of you may find that decision process interesting. And also, I'm going to talk to you a little about my experience in industry. So when I started my PhD, I've always looked up to great teachers and researchers. So I was determined that I'm going to join the academia and become a professor. And by the fourth year, that changed quite a bit, and I was kind of sure I want to go to industry. And there were two major reasons. One was that I did an internship during my PhD that changed my view. I realized that there are companies out there that actually value research, and also it can be really fun to work with different people from different majors that closely. The other thing was kind of more personal. For me personally, it was very hard to unplug, and so many nights leaving the library at 3 a.m. I was like, okay, probably it's healthier for me to go to a type of job that kind of has a set schedule. That piece definitely hasn't changed. I'm actually very happy for mental health reasons that I did that. And then it got to the job search piece. For me, it was very interesting. I was looking for a company that has a tangible product, and it will become more obvious what I mean by tangible when I tell you about the type of problems I worked on. The first company I joined was a digital agriculture company. There I joined as a research scientist and became a research science manager after a few years. In terms of, the general field I've been at is research science, data science, it was interesting to suddenly, from a very kind of isolated mathematical optimization field, all the conferences I ever went to is optimization, maybe a little bit statistics, but suddenly now I had to learn to work with hydrologists, soil scientists, people with climate science background, and just building models like, oh, really? Like, you can't really formulate this like closed form. It's a lot of simulation. It's much more complicated physical systems now. So that was very interesting. And then I joined a personalized styling company. I worked on a supply chain. Again, I've been always looking for companies that have products that touch people, move things around, so that has that physical component. And now I'm at Lyft. I work on pricing with the goal of bringing the best experience to riders and drivers, and every little decisions we make day to day has impact on people, their experience, how they view the world, the communities, and that's the piece that I really like. Briefly wanted to talk to you about the most interesting and most challenging things that I've seen in the past 5 years in industry. The most interesting thing is that the diversity of the group of people. And it's interesting because I work in tech, and tech has been kind of new, and a lot of people who join the companies first as data scientists get to shape the type of community they build. So the first company was like the second mathematical optimizer person in a 70 kind of data science community there. And I had to like learn, again, like with not only, even in tech, like optimization field, there were like mostly statisticians, very different terminologies, very different viewpoint to how to solve the problem. So that was interesting to see how people think about this. And I kind of knew about this, but just doing it right there, being surrounded by people who are not from your background, and learning about the way they work and they think, that was very interesting. The most challenging pieces, so I'm interested in becoming, or like in the longer term, to become a manager, like a people manager, which we call it, and technical manager. And that definitely requires a very different set of skills. I find it very challenging to actually learn about all those new skills. And that is a little more specific perhaps to my type of job, but a little less specific to that. I find it generally difficult as a working mom to find a work-life balance, constantly trying to carve out some time to be with my son, and also bring the best of myself to work after like 5 times my son wakes me up at night. So that's always a challenge, I think. So yeah, happy to answer any questions you may have in the Q&A. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yep, Marlene Nist.
So yeah, I work for RMS, a company here in East Bay, so I'm local. It's called Risk Management Solutions, and we develop models for the insurance industry that they use to manage their risk. And these models are mostly natural catastrophe models, so earthquake, hurricane, flood, but also terrorism, cyber risk. There's a whole lot of whole suite of models that we develop and release. There is a large, so within the company, it's a company is mid-size, has various offices all around the world. The headquarters are here in Newark, in the Bay Area, but we also have offices in Europe and India and Singapore. So my affiliations with Earth Scientists, I work on earthquake hazard within RMS. I lead the team earthquake hazard modelers right now. The whole team in the model development consists of a large group of scientists and engineers, and so we have a large group of researchers on board. And I'll talk a little bit about the challenges, what it is like to be a researcher within our company structure. My career path started out in the Netherlands. I'm originally from the Netherlands. I started studying geophysics in Utrecht University. And then basically the first interdisciplinary aspect of my career started when I chose grad school. And I basically had 2 advisors between 2 universities. I had to travel back and forth. Learned a lot from the university that I had never been to, which is the Delft University of Technology. Worked with the geodetic engineering group to collect geodetic data, GPS data, and then worked with the geodynamics group in Utrecht to interpret and model this GPS data. And so I was very much focused on a career in academics, very much thinking about the next step. And then after graduation, moved to the US and worked as a postdoc at Stanford and at the USGS, back then in Menlo Park. Right now they moved to Mountain View, but also here in the Bay Area. And for about 3 or 4 years or so, I was working as a postdoc. But then basically the last study that I did at the USGS triggered my interest for risk rather than hazard. When I worked on a project that was funded by the insurance industry, and we were looking into earthquake risk in the Tokyo area. And so that was, that triggered my interest, but I was still thinking about academics. And another thing, a major thing happened, then I got pregnant and started thinking about work-life balance. And so I was thinking, okay, all the grant writing, I should just put that aside for now. And this job at RMS came up. I was not necessarily looking for it. RMS was in the Bay Area. I had a friend working there who invited me over and said, well, you know, this is really great. This is what we do. And I basically said, well, okay, well, I'll park myself here for a year before I go back to academics. It seems like a good solution. And I was not going to last more. I was not going to take that break for more than a year. But then I started working there, and I really loved it. And within the year, I decided that this was going to be my career. I wanted to stay within this earthquake risk world. And so that was in 2005. Back then, I joined the company as an earthquake modeler, and then right now, I'm a manager. So I'm managing the earthquake hazard team, and I'm overseeing the development of earthquake hazard models and earthquake risk models. I have to make sure that we do quality control, things like that. I'm helping with rollout. I'm talking to the client. So it's it's a job with a lot of different angles and a lot of different responsibilities. And it's still fun. I think Dalia gave us a few points that we can address. So one of the most exciting aspects of my job right now, I think, at this point, when it used to be development, I'm not doing that much development anymore, but if I look at what I'm doing, I think a really exciting aspect is that we're on the interface between science and industry. And so our responsibility is to make science accessible to people who are actively using it to make decisions about resilience, about risk, about money. And what we do is, in that sense, we feel like, and I know that's the same thing with my team, that we have this responsibility. We have to make sure that the best available science is available in our products. And we feel like we make the world a more resilient place in that sense. Basically that aspect is also the most challenging aspect of the job, because at the same time you have to translate and explain the science to people without a science background. You have to make sure they use it correctly, and so that is not always easy. And that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, a lot of simplifying sometimes. And another challenge for me at this point is, as a manager, I work with a team of, most of them have a science focus, so I feel like I work with a team of scientists. But in the end, we have to release our products. And so we are a for-profit company, so we have to make sure that we make money. And so to find a balance between making sure that we are doing really good science, but at the same time, at some point you have to say, stop. Right now we have to let it go, and it's not perfect. That balance is not easy, and so we work with deadlines, and sometimes that can be really stressful. And so in this world of earthquake insurance and earthquake risk, I think there are career opportunities, and actually there are more and more career opportunities. The insurance world is more and more regulated and requires more insights from the users of these catastrophe models. So earthquake insurance companies, or insurance companies in general, have to understand what's in their models, and they have to, if they use a model, they can just say, no, I got this from RMS and I'm using it. No, they have to explain why they use it the way they do. So they have to understand what's in the models. And so that means that more and more these insurance companies have seismologists or hurricane modelers or meteorologists on board. And for us, with improving technology, it means our models get updated more quickly. We hire more people to work on these models, incorporate the science. And I see our group has expanded quite a bit since I joined. But I also feel like whenever we talk to our clients, who are insurance companies, oftentimes we talk to fellow scientists because they work there in order to understand what is in the models that they're using to price their risk. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Wow, thank you. And Christine Rogers.
So my area, essentially I carved out a sort of pseudo-academic career on the edges of academic enterprise. I began in microbiology and biochemistry as an undergrad, and I had the opportunity to work for a summer in the lab of a quaternary paleoecologist. I had no idea what quaternary paleoecology was, but they said the word pollen, and I thought that was really cool because I was allergic to pollen. So that's how I actually got interested in what I do. So I worked for him for a summer setting up a pollen sampler on the roof of our university, and was talking to him about doing quantitative forest ecology and quantifying, calibrating lake sediment deposits and how much pollen and how many trees, and what was that correlation in quantity. And I said to him, you know, there's another whole area that is really interesting about pollen. It doesn't just fly around in the air. We intersect with that pollen, and there's a whole health component to it. And he said, well, there's a whole discipline of aerobiology. And I said, what is that? And so he took me to my first conference in aerobiology, and I have been in the field of aerobiology ever since. So aerobiology, the study of airborne biological material, has many components, and it's a multidisciplinary field, not just interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. And people come to aerobiology from a number of different disciplines. And I think our whole concept of a single discipline really needs to be thrown out the window, because we all do various interdisciplinary type strategies and work. So I ended up doing a PhD with him on forecasting airborne pollen, and then was trying to decide what to do for my postdoc, because that's what you do after a PhD. And there was one other aerobiologist in Canada, and he was not hiring a postdoc. So my decisions were either set up my own company to do some aerobiology, because aerobiology is in both the outdoor environments and indoor environments. And I actually did that, but it didn't really get going in Canada. But I was offered a postdoc down in the University of Tulsa, Oklahoma, forecasting and looking at dispersion of pollen grains, and then looking at indoor fungal spores as well. So I did that as a postdoc for 2 years, always with the intention of going back home, not staying in Oklahoma. I'm originally from Canada. And I learned so much that I had new questions, and had met this whole community of scientists that really intrigued me and were making me think in new ways. And so after my postdoc, I was looking around for what else should I do, and talked to another scientist, Harriet Burge at Harvard School of Public Health, and she said, come and work with me. I never intended to be going down an academic track, so the fact that I actually ended up in academia is kind of an accident. It wasn't a planned thing. So I went and worked with her at the Harvard School of Public Health, was there for 8 years. I started as a research associate, and then was promoted to research scientist, and then finally to senior research scientist. And that, to me, was actually an ideal position for me, because it was doing research all the time. That's what I wanted to do. I liked the questions. I liked, figuring out how to take the samples, how to get the answer for those kinds of things. And it was interacting with all of these really interesting and fun people. I had no teaching that I had to do, and I had no committee work that I had to do. It's kind of like heaven for a scientist if you don't have to do those things. And I would have stayed there happily for a long time, but those kinds of positions are often on soft money. And so it's hard, and unless the grants keep coming in, you can't necessarily maintain those kinds of positions. So I was there, but I was also able to get my first grant while I was at the Harvard School of Public Health. Even though I wasn't a faculty member, I was able to apply for a grant. So that allowed me then to transition over to the University of Massachusetts as an assistant professor in environmental health sciences. And I didn't really know that I was an environmental health scientist. I just thought it was very interesting looking at pollen grains, fungal spores, allergens in people's environments, both outdoor, indoor, figuring out all those questions. And I didn't really realize that that's what I was until somebody at Harvard was introducing me to somebody else, and she's an exposure assessment scientist. And it was an aha moment. Oh, that's what I am. So I followed the academic track as an assistant professor, almost to tenure, but not quite. So I had the opportunity, I was given the opportunity to jump off the tenure track, much to the consternation of my dean, and I became the assistant director for environmental health and safety in charge of academic safety at the University of Massachusetts. I was very intrigued with how people are exposed to all sorts of things, not just biological things. I would then wanted to expand my knowledge about how people are exposed to chemicals, radiological, just lots more different ways of looking at exposure and assessment. And that position actually was an opportunity for me to do that. At UMass, there were 900 labs. There are probably over 33,000 unique chemicals. So I was very busy. I thought I was very busy as an assistant professor, but I was very busy as in environmental health and safety. And I have just now since transitioned out of environmental health and safety, and I'm sort of back in environmental health sciences as an adjunct associate professor and able to continue grants there. But on the side of all of this, I was always asked to analyze samples for people in homes, for people to help support other research studies that I couldn't really do as part of where I was in whatever academic position or non-academic position I was in. And so in 2003, this was when I was back at Harvard, I formed my own company called Aerobiology Instruction and Research. People wanted to learn how to identify pollen. We needed to support a network of people who could do this kind of work. I became chair of a board called the Pan American Aerobiology Certification Board that helps to certify people who are knowledgeable in how to do these kinds of things. And I was able to essentially make money on the side as well. And I'm going back to that consulting company and now going to go back to one of the things I've always wanted to do is look at those kinds of problems for flooding and hurricane issues, flooding and mold growth in homes, and doing residential type investigations for individual people. So translating my science into the community. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that. So kind of aha moments or little tips or tricks. I think it doesn't matter if you're on the academic track or you're off the academic track, what you need to do is do good science. I think somebody else said that earlier. Doing good science will carry you forward and provide the opportunities that you could never imagine and map out for yourself. So the other thing that you really need to do is not just do the good science, but also publish it and get it out there and still go to all the same kinds of academic meetings like this one, or make large networks of people to communicate your science to, that will then open up those avenues for you going forward.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really impressed with the breadth of pathways that you've each taken to your current spot in your careers. So we'll ask just a couple really quick questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. So I'll go ahead and start. So I am currently an early career scientist, also just finished my PhD trying to figure out my next career step. So this is kind of a question of how do I start? So Anahita, you mentioned that you had an internship in your graduate studies, and that's kind of introduced you to a non-academic career path. And Marlene, you mentioned you had a friend in industry. What about for those of us who may not have had those opportunities? Do you have kind of one tip or one quick advice for early career scientists who might be interested in a career that's maybe not in the academic track?
My response to that would be use your network. I haven't personally done the best job doing that, but I would do that if I ever want to switch my job. It is the best thing. It's kind of win-win. You get to learn so much if you know somebody, who worked even I don't know, not only in conferences, but I oftentimes get emails from a faculty on my PhD, sometimes even master's back in my home country, Iran, where somebody says, hey, I'm interested in this career, and I'm just so happy to help. And I guess I'm kind of I never reach out that far. I feel a little bit oh, maybe it is annoying to them, or maybe I feel shy. Don't do that. People are generally very happy to help, to refer. So yeah, short answer would be your network is probably much bigger than you think it is. So just talk with people.
I know I'm not in academia, and I was never in academia, but I totally agree with her comments. It's just use your network. I have been in the workforce for 31 years, and I have only applied to 3 jobs, and I did not have to apply for my first job out of college. It was just, network and, just talking to people, and all of a sudden I had my first job out of college, so it is very important that you, really get to know people, that you express your interests, your desires, and of course finding within you what is it that you really want to do. But use your network. That is so important in the health of every professional research or anything that you want to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's one other option that if you don't necessarily have the people in your network that you feel like you need, I think LinkedIn is a good way to go. You can search, and I get contacted through LinkedIn all the time, and I'll actually look at all the contacts. And you can find out, we do internships too, and it's usually a really good way to get to know people and to for them to understand what it is to work in a company, and it's mostly summer interns. And then for us to really get to know someone. So oftentimes, that is a good way to do it.
So I think also giving yourself time and space to think about what you want to do rather than what you think people think you should do. That is probably just allow yourself some time to figure out what really drives your passion, and then go and explore who does that and who can help you do what you want to do.
Thank you so much for those interesting responses. I have a question. How did you find your voice as a scientist, and how did that inform your career? And this is for anybody.
Well, so you said as a scientist, and again, I have to assert the fact that I am not a scientist, but I have to, you see the panel is mostly women. And I'm sure that, as women, we might have had a little bit of a harder time in our careers. I personally did at the beginning, and I'm not only a woman, but I'm also Hispanic. And, so there is that issue with, am I expressing myself? And, and when I first started in the workforce, I was the only woman sitting around a table around a lot of men, and I would say something, and nobody will hear me, and the next person sitting next to me will say exactly the same thing, and he would be heard. And so to me, after many rounds of that, I had an aha moment, and it's like, I gotta find my voice. I gotta be heard. I went to school, I have my degrees, I know what I'm talking about. Why are people not hearing me? And you know, at the beginning, I was just afraid to speak up because I thought I was going to break something. And I had to really get rid of that. And it wasn't that I was yelling or screaming, I was just being more assertive. And the other thing as a woman that I learned is not to caveat my statements and my answers at the beginning by starting with, I am sorry, but I don't know if this is true, blah, blah, blah. You know, just take that out and don't say it. If you say that and nobody hears you after, you know, whatever you want to say afterwards, nobody's going to hear you. So start being assertive and speak up and, you know, with your voices and what you know that you learn and you study and you know, and you'll find your voice. You will eventually develop more confidence in you know, what you know that you know and what you don't know, and which is as important as what you know. So just you know, just try to be, you know, be more assertive and secured in what you study and what you have learned.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to that point?
Yeah, for me, I think it was more practice, 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 and don't give up if something's scary or intimidating or challenging. Keep going. Never give up. That was how I got there. It took a while, though.
Great advice. Anyone else? Well, should we turn questions over to the audience now? I believe we have somebody who's supposed to be running mics. Okay. So they're raising their hand in the back there. So if anybody has a question in the audience, if you'd like to raise your hand, someone will come to you with a microphone. Here's one over here.
Yeah, if you could go back in time and visit yourself as a high school senior, what kind of advice or what one thing would you tell yourself back then? And I ask, of course, because I have a daughter who's a high school senior, who's on the verge of, you know, contemplating a life in science.
I guess I'll just start. I did want to be a scientist, but I didn't have the opportunity to do it, you know, because of all of the things that I had to go through. But when I was in high school, my goal was to, you know, get a PhD in solar physics. That's what I wanted to do. And I love physics. And, but studying physics in Costa Rica was to be a teacher, and I didn't want to do that. So I found the best application to physics that I could find, which was electrical engineering. And even at that, I couldn't really do that to begin with, you know. So I had to, you know, take the 7-year path through college, and then, you know, go to work and, you know, get my master's part-time. And by the time I finished my master's, I was pregnant with my second boy, and the PhD was out the window, you know. So it is a, but you know, going back to high school when I graduated and I was going to go to college, and they told me no, I could not be the first electrical engineer woman in the program. You know, I could have been a little more assertive and said, why not the first one? Why couldn't I do it? I just, you know, I was, you know, 17, 18 years old, and they said I couldn't, and I said, fine, you know, I'll go to whatever they let me. And, you know, so I learned through my career to be a little more forceful and really not back down. When people tell me no, I just go knock on another door and another door, and until something happens, you know. But, you know, going back, just, you know, just that the things come with maturity, of course, and lessons learned, and you learn your lessons through your life. But if I look back, you know, I probably could have avoided the 7 years issue, you know, way back when.
My piece of advice is for either males or females in high school. Just advise them, yes, you can. You can do it. You can dream, and you can work towards your dream. You may not get to where your original dream was, but you can find that path. You can just figure it out. I'm really happy that you're asking questions about how to advise your daughters in high school, because my daughter's sitting over here in science. So that's really fabulous. But yes, you can.
I just wanted to second that because my advice would be just don't give up and be hopeful. It has helped me so much in my career. I've been rejected for grants from internships in the US because of where I'm from, and I've been okay with that. It's the reality. It's being practical, I think, is key. So be practical, be hopeful, and push. And it may not lead you to, the ideal place, but it may be very close to that, and you may actually find it practically pretty close to ideal.
Okay, other questions from the audience?
We have a question from the app. It says, I am in a PhD geoscience education program. Where would you advise that I apply for internship apart from educational institutions?
Wait, NASA, of course. In fact, the application period is open right now for the NASA internships. And we also have postdoc opportunities, just in case.
Yeah, I don't think there's one place where you can go for internships, but reaching out to companies that you think are interesting and that have a research department, and just asking if they do internships, I think that is the way to go if you're not familiar with these companies, and that's how it works for us.
Non-governmental organizations, there are just a plethora of places that would take an intern. In fact, I think there are many, many internships that go unfilled because there weren't applicants for them. That should never happen. So I think there are companies, you can approach companies that if you know that's something that you like to do, approach the company and say, I want to get some experience in this. Could I work for you for the summer, or could I do an internship with you? I think it's really important just to explore a lot of different avenues, private, public, all sorts of avenues.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. Do you know of a resource that lists some of those companies that you're talking about? So, yeah, in case you don't know of some companies that might be quite interesting to work for. This goes to anyone.
I don't know.
Well,
There may be one, but I don't know.
One plug is if you go down there, there's Career Row, so there's a whole set of networking opportunities, there's even boards where you can look for opportunities. And I also wanted to make a plug that after this, several of the panelists hopefully will be staying, and you can talk more specifically about opportunities they may know of or colleagues they may know, and that's often when you can get your foot in the door, is just finding a network or one email introduction to another person. So stay and talk, or check out the AGU careers area.
Thank you, Dalia. Okay, any other questions from the audience?
We have another question from the app, if you're willing, although there is a person over there to your left who has a live question from the audience. In the meantime, the question is, what was the role of mentors in helping you navigate your career?
So mentors are extremely, extremely important. I have always seek mentors, and not one or two, but many, and try to get mentors that are completely, people that completely think differently than I do. We all have blind spots, and it's good to have a mentor that can help us see and find those blind spots. But the most important thing about those mentors is that the mentors that do not tell you what to do. Most of the time I find that the best mentors are those who help you find your path, that ask you questions and help guide you, but not tell you you have to do this or you have to do that. And the minute they start telling you what to do, then it's their path and not the path that I probably would have followed. And the other thing is, no matter where you are in your career, be a mentor. Just because you're graduating or you're just getting your you're a, a PhD student or even a college student or wherever you are in your career, there is always somebody who needs mentoring. So, find mentors and be a mentor. It's a very important thing. You learn from your mentees as much as your mentees learn from you.
Okay, well, if no other panelists have a response to that, we'll take our question from the audience.
Yes, my question probably is directed to the aerial biologist. It sounds like you have maybe you're sole proprietor or a small company, independent. Would you like to talk about the tips or techniques of getting jobs, marketing, obtaining contracts, and how you balance that with your work too then?
So my company is co-directed by my husband and I, who's also an aerobiologist. We actually didn't have any trouble finding work. The work came to us because we were experts in pollen and spore identification. We were experts in indoor mold investigations. And so when people had particularly difficult problems with buildings, they would come to us to actually try and get us to work on this problem. And I didn't have a way to do that as part of a university position. And so making the company was to be able to address and help people that needed my help and expertise in a different format. So we set it up in 2003. It was a simple sole proprietorship. And we set up a website, very small, very simple, and we networked with other consulting companies to get some work, but most of the work came to us because of our expertise. And it was not just a small operation for a while. I was working all day, coming home, making dinner, and then analyzing samples from 7 at night until 1 in the morning, and it put at least one of our kids through college, if not two. So it can be done, but in terms of if you needed to do marketing, I think you just simply, the cold calling is one thing, but making sure that your expertise is out and well communicated to the people who would be looking for it. So writing papers on some of your work that you've done as a company is one of those ways.
Okay, other audience questions? In the back? We can't hear you.
Excuse me, I have a couple of questions. Like one is a curiosity, like can I be a researcher and an entrepreneur parallelly? Like professionally I'm a civil engineer and I do works like we build homes in Nepal. So can I continue my work and my research parallelly or not? And Gorkha earthquake 2015 was the turning point of my career. That's why I opted to disaster risk management, and I've been working in Nepali Himalayas since then. And I'm still in confusion. It's been already 3 to 4 years that I've completed my master's. I so want to do my PhD as well in a good university. Of course, I want to apply in US as well. And I'm also working in an research organization that is called Institute of Himalayan Risk Reduction, which we have been working for the past 3 years. So shall I be pursuing my study, or shall I be working with my organization and increase my networking? So what would be your input on this? Thank you so much.
So I think you have the classical problem that we often all have, is that we have many more things that we want to do than we probably have time to do. But you have to dig down and find out what's your passion. If your passion is to go and do the PhD, you need to do the PhD. And never regret what you decide after you do it. So yes, you can, and you can do it all. You can have your company and your research go hand in hand, and you find a way to do that administratively through whatever organization you're associated with.
Yeah, and sorry. No, and I also think that if you would like to stay in science or in some sort of science, in either as a scientist at a company or in academics, it's probably wise to pursue your PhD, because that is where you learn how to do research, and then after your PhD you can maybe do all these other things. In our company, we really look at PhDs. We need people that have had the opportunity to work on various topics in depth, and so that is my perspective.
So we have time for one last question in the back here.
First of all, I would like to thank you for sharing your experience with us. As you all expressed, some of you had a zigzag path in your career. Not everybody has a straight career path. When you were a graduate student, how did you know that you wanted to move into a different path, or what you're good at? Or, I mean, do you have any advice to students who want to move into industry but not sure which way to go?
I'm not sure anybody has a crystal ball as to where they think. They may have a plan, but you don't end up necessarily where you plan. So I'm not sure that you can. For me, it was as opportunities came up, I had to make a decision on what I wanted to do, and I think an academic track is one way. But industry and many other avenues are as valid and as rewarding and as good as any other. And you should never let a feeling of say, well, I should do this, but I want to do that, and not do that. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, I feel like you should definitely follow your interest, and you should follow your passions, and you should try to become as good as you can be in a certain topic, or as knowledgeable, or how do you say it, explore your talents, and then go from there. I mean, it's not like especially not when you're in grad school. I don't think you can control where you're going with an industry job on the horizon or something like that. So I think you should really try to get the best or the most out of your research, and then go from there. I mean, I think usually when you've explored your talents and you know what you're good at, it also means that you're probably a good problem solver. You can apply all the knowledge and the skills that you've learned in other areas other than the one sort of narrow topic that you are doing during your grad research. And that is that is my take on it, and that's also my experience.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing is once you make a decision, just it's the decision you made, and don't feel regrets. Just see it as an opportunity. If you thought that you might have made the wrong decision, don't see it as a bad thing. Try to see it as an opportunity to do something a little different for a while and learn and pick up more tools, and then the track, will put you back wherever that you think that you need to go. But having regrets is not a good thing. So.
Well, I told you how I made my decision. I think everything that was said, accurate, cannot add much to it, except for maybe one thing that I think that the type of life and work style you choose also differs from from academia to industry, and then everything in between, research labs, and so that if you maybe think where you want to be and what kind of a lifestyle and work style you want to have, and then maybe back calculate where that would the trajectory, where would that be in that spectrum, and then find a job in if you want to not do research or only I want to teach, right? So they're very different, right? So if you're going to know the combination of basically how do you want to spend what is your perfect day like, right? And then try to find a trajectory into that spectrum, and then perhaps the type of job would emerge from that.
Well, thank you so much to everybody for joining us today, and thank you to the audience for being here and participating. This was a great panel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And